And I now give the floor to His Excellency Dato Erywan bin Pehin Yusof, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Brunei Darussalam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all and a good afternoon. I have the great honor to convey the warm regards of His Majesty Sultan Haji Hassanal Bolkiah, Muizzaddin Wad Daulah, Sultan and Yang di-Pertuan of Brunei Darussalam to this year's August General Assembly. At the outset, I would also like to congratulate His Excellency Chaba Korosi for assuming the presidency of the 77th session of this Assembly. Also, our deep appreciation to His Excellency Abdullah Shahid for his contributions and efforts in bringing multilateralism, which is an important and fundamental principle of our work at the United Nations, to the forefront during his presidency. Mr. President, while it is good to be back in New York and at the United Nations to deliver Brunei's statement in person after a 2 years absence, this year's debate continues to take place amidst global uncertainties and challenges that test our individual and collective resilience. It has been almost 3 years since we first heard of COVID-19, and whilst we are still feeling its effects, many of us now are looking forward to a post-pandemic world. However, a key and crucial factor to achieving this would be a successful vaccination program and by having vaccine equity. Lest we forget the WHO's mantra that says, and I quote, "No one is safe until everyone is safe," end quote. Unfortunately, as of June this year, only 58 out of 194 countries have achieved the 70% complete vaccination target set by the WHO, whilst the others have not. Although initial challenges faced regarding supply and manufacture of vaccines that resulted in delays and have been addressed, we continue to see many countries still facing the problems of getting their allocated vaccines. While we recognize the role of COVAX has played in this global health emergency, we also see the continued need to address the fundamental issue of vaccine inequity that has continued to impede supply and distribution. In this regard, we need to develop a more effective and more resilient global health infrastructure as part of our preparedness to face possible future global health emergencies. More efforts are also needed to address the impact from the pandemic, especially mental health, a condition that is often taken lightly even before the pandemic. This is important as it can result in a huge economic burden to the countries concerned in the future. We in Brunei Darussalam have come to recognize the need to include this in our post-pandemic recovery efforts. As such, we have introduced a 5-year multi-sectoral mental health action plan. In addition, we are also working on a regional basis in East Asia in promoting better mental health and well-being. Mr. President, climate change is yet another challenge the world has been facing even prior to the pandemic, and it is one which continues to be a real and existential threat today, which, if left unaddressed, can lead to another global emergency. In 2015, the world came together on two landmark agreements, namely the Paris Accord, which sets a target limit of global warming by 1.5 degrees and global greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which aims, among others, to reach zero hunger. I believe these two are interlinked and interconnected aspirations. And yet, as we reach the halfway mark to the SDGs, we see the latest report by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change showing that the impacts of climate change on agriculture has led to devastating consequences on food production and food security. Furthermore, the recent report on the state of food security and nutrition in the world by the FAO, the WHO, and others has shown that by 2030, the progress made in alleviating world hunger since 2015 will be nullified unless something drastic is done. This is why we must hasten our efforts and remain steadfast in our commitments. To this end, Brunei Darussalam is committed to the climate ambition and is moving towards net zero by 2050 through forest preservation as well as transition to clean energy to shape a low-carbon and climate-resilient future, with 72% of our total land area still covered by rainforests, and our greenhouse gas emission only accounts for 0.017% that of global emission. As one of the regional champions for conservation, environment, and forest preservation, Brunei is also playing a lead role regionally by hosting the ASEAN Center for Climate Change. This will function as an intergovernmental center for climate change coordination and cooperation. It will also strengthen the region's capabilities to prevent, mitigate, and manage climate-related disasters through established mechanisms and formulations of policies. We appreciate the contributions thus far from our partners and friends on this initiative and continue to welcome others to come on board. Mr. President, the UN is the foremost multilateral institution, and thus its member states have a responsibility to the international law and adhere to the founding principles of this organization, specifically respecting the sovereign equality and territorial integrity of all members. The maintenance of international peace and security is of utmost importance, and this is no different in Southeast Asia. Last year, our region's peace and stability was affected, and ASEAN collectively agreed on a 5-point consensus to work gradually and constructively towards a peaceful solution and eventual return to normalcy in one of our fellow member states, namely Myanmar. Unfortunately, matters continue to require close attention, and as such, we appreciate the continued support and contributions of the United Nations and others in ASEAN's efforts. On a similar note, the current conflict in Europe has also brought about global concerns, leading member states to unanimously adopt a resolution that ensures accountability of the Security Council. It is, however, disappointing that the same attention and regard has not been given to solving other areas of conflict, particularly on the question of Palestine. We need to ensure the same amount of attention and consideration be given to conflicts wherever they are, particularly where territorial integrity and sovereignty has been violated. Therefore, the international community must remain resolute in their commitment to safeguarding the two-state solution towards achieving an independent state of Palestine based on the pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Mr. President, in conclusion, let me say that as we continue to address the concerns of the world in pre- and post-crisis terms, it is clear what these watershed moments in our collective history are. It should not deepen division among us. It should not entrench us in our differences, and it should not lead us to serve only ourselves. However, it should, in these final years of the SDG, make us come together and uphold the spirit of multilateralism that would transform us into a better and more resilient United Nations. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs II of Brunei Darussalam. I now give the floor to His Excellency